Hello everyone, today I'm taking a look at Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. To be upfront and honest, I did not like this game a lot. Fortunately, it was very short, but I'm going to go into a few things I didn't like about it. It's funny that Jak and Daxter, as I'm going through this compendium of the PS2 exclusives that were really part of that whole era of platformers and, very video game-esque video games. I mean, these aren't sports games, these aren't shooters. They appeal to the gamer core crowd. And the one thing that always struck me about Jak and Daxter is just the slight styles and nods that even back then I had this hunch that it was trying to emulate a certain other game. So apparently you play as a blonde hair anime style elf that goes on a giant quest with a sidekick, an annoying sidekick, and a silent protagonist, as well as an old man who teaches you along the way. So it kind of sort of was like, this is kind of Ocarina coded, which to be fair, at that time, it was the highest rated game of all time. So they'd be kind of dumb not to try to emulate some elements of it. But it's a little bit on the nose. On that point, the one really shocking thing about this game that I didn't realize, and if you heard me correctly, yes, I said silent protagonist. Jak does not talk in this game at all. He'll make sounds like Link, but he actually does not talk. And it's very, very odd because he looks like a very anime character. He looks like he should talk. He definitely talks in the sequels, but in this one he's completely silent, which really threw me for a loop. Daxter is kind of the main, talking role. He's, he's very funny, very quirky, kind of silly. Not quirky, he's just silly and very outspoken and loud. And he fits well because he's the foil to Jak's character, who's kind of the stoic, silent one, but literally silent. Along with him, there's also the Green Sage, Samos, who is the main kind of guiding character that kind of gives them a hard time. He kind of says, Jak, you have to prove yourself. And with Daxter, he's like, well, Daxter is just completely useless. He just messes up in every opportunity he gets, and he's going to bring everything down, but we need him anyway. And then you have, what's her name? Kira, who's kind of like the mechanic girl in the village who helps you along with your quest. So every time you get stuck and you need to do a certain blockage to be removed or some major boss needs to be defeated, she is the equipment that helps you get to the next location. So she's kind of a support kind of character. And finally, we have the two villains, which kind of show up near the end, which don't really do much. They just kind of like, oh, by the way, we're in this. So kind of a very rushed thing. And it feels a little bit like a rush game. Like overall kind of feeling of the game is like you only get to meet the last sage just a little bit. And yeah, that's the other, Zelda thing. They're all called sages. And so that's the main kind of core theme of the game, which is environment. Literally, each one of these sages is responsible for their respective eco power, and eco is essentially magic in this game, with the Green Sage having, it's kind of funny, they never say the forest, fire, lightning, or whatever. It's always by the color, which is just weird, even though it's exactly the same thing as the elements or Captain Planet or Zelda or something. So you have the forest one, the blue one, which is water focused, kind of, the red one, which is fire focused, and the yellow one, which again you don't really ever meet, but I'd assume he'd be electricity. In any case, so what happens in the story is that essentially the eco has been unbalanced. There is dark eco in the world, and so Jak sets out on a quest essentially to stop the black eco from destroying everything and also saving, the other villagers and going along the way. And so the main way that Jak does this is through power cells, which are essentially the jiggy pieces in this universe. They essentially are the items that allow you that once you have enough, you can go to the next level and keep going and moving forward through the game. It also starts at the beginning with Jak and Daxter going to this island where they see a ceremony full of these things called lurkers and the two villains of the game, and Daxter is a normal human kid who ends up falling into this black eco that then turns him into like a ferret or an austral, according to the instruction booklet. And so that's kind of how the game starts. They have to find a way to turn Daxter back into his normal form and begin their quest. It's really weird that there are a few things this game does really well, and a few things that it does very, very terribly. So, I mean, the first thing that this game, I think I had to give it praise for, is the controls overall feel pretty good. Jak moves really well, similar to Crash, which is Naughty Dog's previous series. He has good platforming, he has great grabbing. Very rarely did I feel... there were some pretty difficult platforming sections, but a lot of it felt pretty decent, honestly. That a lot of the time it felt okay to jump from platform to platform, and you could always grab if you made a mistake, but sometimes things were pretty just difficult. Aside from the power cells, you also have the artifact or precursor orbs, which just look like Easter eggs to me. That's what they're supposed to be. It's funny because I had this discussion once with someone, like, an Easter egg is something in a game where it's super rare and hidden away, but that's not practically what Easter eggs are really used for. Most Easter eggs are kind of these small collectibles that are scattered throughout the world, and in this game, the main collectibles literally look like Easter eggs, so I can't help but call them Easter eggs because they actually fulfill the role of what they're supposed to actually be. Not just a very rare nod or hidden message, but a hidden but very collectible item throughout the game. So I kind of found it funny that this fit that very, very well. Aside from that, the third other item you get are these fly modules, where there's 7 of them in every level, and it's just like an extra thing where if you collect all 7, then you get an extra power core. And the only point of these is really by the end of the game, if you have 100% and 100 power cores. I do like the fact that there is literally 100 to 100 correlation there. It makes it very easy to track the game and the overall progress. Is that essentially you are able to unlock the secret ending, open the final door, and see the secret, which, kind of not really spoilers, but the secret ending is that behind the secret door is some light revealing another secret. So it's completely pointless. They don't even tell you what the secret is. It's just kind of like a filler there. Just speaking on things that this game does well. So one thing, of course, gameplay, platforming, it's very, it works basically. Combat is a bit frustrating, though. But aside from that, one thing that this game does very well is auto-saving. The fact that it actually has that feature and it's always constantly saving and updating and you don't have to manually save it all the time is, I think, a great feature. I think another really great feature of Jak and Daxter, something that even next-gen games struggle with, and I was very impressed with, is that there are no loading screens in this game. That is unprecedented for games of this time, games before this time, and especially games after this time. Load times have always been, I think, the main killer in a lot of games. Having the player sit out or get distracted or get unimmersed from the situation is never fun. But this game, I was so confused when I was going into a certain section and it said, Rock Creek or something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to wait for the stutter or the load. And yes, you do go through a narrow corridor, but there was no loading. There was no stuttering. It was just all there. It was the most seamless transition I have ever seen in my life of gaming that I was kind of shocked. I was like, how did they do this? It's just loaded. It's just there. It made the world feel actually connected rather than just an impression of being connected. You wouldn't see something like that until something like Dark Souls, where the whole world is just one giant seamless interaction with skyboxes showing other locations off in the distance. I think another thing I also like about this game is that it is very short. You can beat it under 8 hours or so, and that's really good for a very hyper-focused, distinct experience. Also, I really like the special sort of, I don't know what you call them, transport levels, where you use certain items like the Zoomer, which is a kind of flying motorcycle bike thing with a plane propeller attached to it, and also the Flit, which is this kind of bird thing, almost like out of Star Wars, that you take into the sky and can platform across certain things. And those sections are always very fun. Also, something I actually love are the eco powers, especially the blue one. I've never experienced this in a game where you get the power up and it increases your mobility, and you usually have to take it to a certain location to activate a puzzle. But what it also does is all the destructible items in the environment react to you and automatically essentially fast travel to you so that you can auto collect a bunch of stuff, and it feels really good. I kind of honestly wish more games did this, or that they give you a kind of reward when you pick up an item that you already have full health or full, currency, that would give you some kind of bonus or boost. And in this case, it's just fast collecting them to you, it feels really good. It makes it kind of worth going out of your way to get it. There's also a very interesting health system to this game. So you always start with 3 kind of hearts, more or less, and if you get hit once, you take 1 damage. You can collect these little green orbs, though, and if you collect 50 of them, you get 1 extra hit point, and on top of 3, you have a max of 4. So the problem is you rarely get to 50, and if you do, it doesn't give you that much of an advantage. If they gave you way more of these, or maybe just way less of them and reduce the cost to get an extra health point, it would make sense, but it's a very odd health system, especially when you factor in the fact that if you fall over a cliff, or certain enemies and items can one-shot you, you just immediately respawn to the last checkpoint. No questions asked. There are a few kind of funny segments where Daxter will kind of go to Jak, and there'll be a little cutscene of Daxter doing some one-liner like, oh, don't worry, at the funeral, I'll make sure that we say something really poetic, like, how the heck am I supposed to get out of here now? And so that's all good and fun. Honestly, though, I could see some people getting very annoyed at watching those cutscenes, which is funny that it won't play them forever. There's a certain point when Daxter will just stop making comments if you died quite a lot, and it'll just immediately respawn you, which is super fast and super efficient. But again, it kind of denigrates the whole health system. Like, it should just be hearts or orbs or something, rather than you need 50 of these things for the chance to get 1 extra little health that is non-permanent. Again, I also really like how it displays how you've collected everything in the level. For example, when you get that last precursor orb or the last flight module, it'll kind of pop up and let you know, and so it feels really good to complete it. And it's kind of intended for you to complete these sections because they're pretty easy. Honestly, it's very hard. I had to use a guide maybe once to find something, but everything else was, it flowed very nicely. There are of course side quests you do where certain characters will ask you to go do a certain objective in the level, and they'll give you a power core for it. Very simple stuff. It's also interesting that the entire aesthetic of the civilization is kind of sort of Japanese, and they kind of sort of have an anime art style. And there's just a lot of things here that are obviously showing how big and how much influence the Japanese had back at this time in gaming, and just how Western audiences were just a little bit more open to Japanese style entertainment. The idea of having an anime style aesthetic for a Western style cartoon, or for a Western-made cartoon, wasn't a weird or unthinkable thing. Anime at this time was, I think, in some ways more mainstream than it is now, with shows like Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z. People may have, derided them or made fun of them, but they acknowledged them at least part of culture, while even though anime is more accepted now, it's still considered to be a more underground thing. Like, not everyone knows what Attack on Titan is, or Demon Slayer, but even your parents might know things like Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z, because there was a concerted effort in the 90s to cross those two cultures together and adopt them into the Western Hemisphere. I guess another thing that is kind of bad about Jak is that there is not a lot of time spent on tutorials, and that's fine, but then there are just certain advanced moves that I had no idea I could even do until later in the game. Example, if you punch and immediately jump afterwards, you do an upward punch. That is not standard practices for games. It's like X is to jump. Okay, I don't need a tutorial for that, but holding L1 lets you do a higher jump. Tapping L1, doing a roll, and then pressing X immediately after lets you do a long jump. Like, these are things that would be useful to know, and as far as I can tell, there's no tutorial for them whatsoever. And there are definitely some parts where you need to know those moves, like halfway through the game. You had to have learned them and mastered them for certain parts of the game. And again, other things in the environment besides the blue eco that power certain technologies and makes you go faster, there's also orange eco that lets you shoot things, and then there's certain shooting mini games. There's also red eco, which powers you up and gives you more of a kind of AoE kind of boost to your attacks. And so together with those, it it adds to certain segments of the game to specifically target those specific powers and certain mini games for those specific power-ups, essentially. So I really want to quickly talk about the two things I really disliked about this game. And it's two things. Now, this is more of an aesthetic thing, but in the early 2000s, everyone talks about, tropical water locations because the graphics and gameplay and the physics engines for early 3D had finally been figured out. And so the next big thing was animating water. So there were a lot of water levels like Kingdom Hearts, Wind Waker, Dark Cloud. They all really had really nice water or water effects. And I just have to say this, the water in Jak and Daxter 1 is some of the ugliest looking water I have ever seen. It is basically a flat texture that has no depth to it. It's basically like, it looks like a piece of, or like a thing of saran wrap. It's absolutely fake looking and does not fit the vibe it was going for at all. And I just really expected better, honestly, when its contemporaries like Super Mario Sunshine did fantastic water effects. And as a contemporary of that age, I just don't know what happened. The other thing I really despise, I think, Jak and Daxter for this, is the music. And listening to the music on your own, you might not think it's not bad, but in gameplay, it's just so monotonous. It's the music in this game is legitimately terrible. I cannot stress this, that there were certain points where I muted the game and I could suddenly play better and I wasn't suddenly falling asleep. There's something about it where there's not a real harmony, there's not real melody, it's just random sounds. There's not even like a beat or anything. There's no rhythm or harmony, and it's just really terrible, honestly, the music in this game, and it makes it a very unpleasant experience. And that's really what I kind of took away from it, is that Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, it's an okay game. It controls, pretty well, but it is not a memorable or great experience. If I was a PlayStation kid, I realized that this would be the game that I would be given, or the game I would gravitate to the most. And I have to say, thank God that's not the case, because this is not what I want. This is not a fun or deep or meaningful experience. It's not overall bad. Like, there are good qualities here for sure, but really the music and the overall, bringing the overall experience down, it is not great. And so because of that, I think of most of the PlayStation 2, series and exclusives, this one has probably been the most disappointing to me as the first entry in the series. And usually the first entries are usually the strongest, honestly. I'm still shocked by Sly Cooper and how good that game is. Now, I just didn't know. I had no idea how well made it is. And Jak is just not even close to being where Sly is. And you'll never know until you just play them and find out. So there we are. Anyway, I think Daxter has a great voice actor. He adds a lot of energy and spice to the game. It's decently fun, but out of all the PlayStation games and exclusives that I've played, this is one that I actually would not recommend. I did not enjoy this. It was just not worth it in the end, is how I felt about it, which I did not expect. And also the fact, the title, the Precursor Legacy. So the Precursor, essentially, the forerunners of this universe. They are the ancient peoples who left behind this technology, and that's a cool concept, right? But they never actually go into any story or what any of that means. There's no Mass Effect style story or something similar to Halo. You could do that and it's a children's game. I know, but you could have done something other than, these are the levels where you have to get the stuff in. So yeah, because of a few factors and a lot of things, I'm just not a fan of this one. That's a shame, I guess. But yeah, I beat it. It was short, thankfully, which allowed me to beat it and give my voice on it. But yeah, we'll see what the other Jak games are like, because I still have some hope for those. But for now, that's kind of it. Anyway, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.